John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's across the glass.
John, how many times a day do you think Cecily Mayart Cruz hits refresh on social media to see when Alberto Carvahlo is going to get charged with whatever the heck the FBI is looking for?
That button has to be like a morphine drip.
And I want you to be all the way pissed off.
What do you think she's doing this weekend to celebrate?
Oh, I think there might be a boozy brunch or two.
Get that money.
Saturday and Sunday.
But let us keep it real.
She's going to keep that party going until...
May.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of the Too Many Lawyers podcast, which you can download wherever you download your favorite podcasts. He's also our legal eagle over here at KABC, the one and only Royal Oaks. Royal, welcome.
Hey, thank you, John. How are you?
I'm doing a lot better than Alberto Carvahlo.
Yes.
Who apparently had the feds raid not only his home here in Los Angeles, but LAUSD offices on Beaudry Street and a location in the state of Florida, which is, of course, where he worked before he moved here to Los Angeles to be the superintendent of LAUSD. Certainly, no one wants the feds going through their stuff at their house, their office, and some other place. Apparently, it's tied to some AI company that's had some troubles with the law, been accused of fraud, those sorts of things. What do you make of what all has transpired?
Yeah, it's very mysterious, John, because, as you have reported the last few days, you've talked about possibilities. When you've got a fancy job, whether it's Miami or LA, you're running the school system, you have an opportunity to maybe, put your hand in the till in terms of gigantic contracts. But we don't know for sure. And even after several days, all we know is the FBI swooped in. They took all sorts of stuff from various places, but we really don't know if he is actually a target or they just won't look at his documents. Is he possibly going to be charged with something? That this $3 million deal you referred to for an AI chatbot called Ed, it was supposed to be used in district schools, but it never actually happened. So, they got their $3 million from LAUSD. Is it about that? A little bit dark, but Carvahlo could be in some serious trouble.
Can you talk to us about the timeline of the federal government when they're conducting an investigation? I know that we want the answers now. We want to know what's going on. We want to know why you were there. We want to know what you were looking for. But the feds, they operate on their own timetable, don't they?
They do, and they know that they can really step in it and have egg on their face if they pull the trigger too fast. And if they come out with, an accusation or indictment or use a person of interest, because if they don't really get the goods, that they can look bad. And that's why sometimes it takes months or even years for them to dig into this stuff. I mean, they got a statute of limitations in every case they have to worry about. They can't do it indefinitely. But I think he's got to be so nervous about all this stuff. I'll tell you a little quick personal story. I saw him speak at a luncheon business downtown LA thing about a month ago. I saw something very weird. He was being introduced, and the introducer was just slobbering all over him. I mean, just saying the nicest things, just over the top. You look over at the speaker, and you say, oh, my gosh, he has no response at all, flat affect. He just no. And then the introducer doubles down. He says, I watched a 20-minute press conference that Mr. Carvahlo gave. I was so impressed. I watched it a second time because it was just had these brilliant gems. That was ridiculous. I looked back at Carvahlo, absolutely nothing. Now, maybe, I'm no psychologist, John, but maybe he kind of knew something was coming down the pipe. Because what human being, who isn't a robot, doesn't it give at least a faint smile, a nod, a little salute? Thanks, Chief. Nothing. So this guy, maybe he knew stuff was coming down. I'm sure he had some clue that he was in some trouble, and sure enough, he may be.
He had other things on his mind. Now, let's talk about his legal status now, because he hasn't been charged with a crime. So it's not like he's an accused criminal or he is a defendant in a courtroom. We don't know that will ever happen. That, in fact, could not happen. We know that there have been raids at his home, his office, and another location. But given the fact that he hasn't been charged with a crime, I don't know if you're the LAUSD. Can you say, all right, you're no longer allowed to negotiate contracts on our behalf? You're no longer allowed to be the leader of the school district? Or do they allow things to go on business as usual?
It's a tough call, isn't it? Because, I mean, imagine it as sort of a continuum. The first part of the continuum is, rumorizing. Oh, Mr. X is in trouble. He's a bad guy. Well, do you suspend him? Do you fire him? Well, probably not. Now it comes out, the feds are saying, we're looking at somebody. Then you move along the continuum. They arrest him or they search his house. Then they charge him with something. Then there's a trial. If the trial goes on, until there is a jury verdict, John, the presumption of innocence says Mr. Carvahlo is not guilty. So at what point along that timeline does the board say, sorry, pal, but you're out? Now, I think the answer is he has a right to stay on his job and complain loudly if they suspend him or fire him, except if it gets so bad, if it looks so bad, it's bad for business. It's hard to do your job. There's no confidence by the public in him or the board. Why haven't you put this guy on the bench? Like put the teacher in the rubber room. So the short answer is there is no clear guideline as to when somebody should be either suspended or fired. We just have to wait until, how bad the mushroom cloud is prior to the actual jury verdict saying, hey, you're going to Sing Sing.
I would imagine if it were me, I would want to go on a leave of absence so I could handle my own affairs because there are only 24 hours in a day. And if you're busy working your 9 to 5, you don't have time to make sure that you stay out of the clink.
So the reason people don't do that, even though it makes sense, is number one, they say to themselves, it'll look like I'm guilty if I take a leave. Number two, I'm the boss, but the boss always has lieutenants who, actually do most of the work day to day. So all he has to do is say, I'm staying on the job. I'm at my desk protecting the children of LAUSD. But in fact, 9 hours a day, he's working on his case with Mark Garrigus or whoever he lawyers up with. And meantime, he has, the real people who actually do the work, protect the kids and do the curriculums and all the rest of the stuff that his office does.
We're speaking with Royal Oakes, the host of the Too Many Lawyers podcast, which you can download wherever you download your favorite podcasts. All right, Royal, let's shift gears here and talk about the new lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass, for shifting blame and lying, allegedly, about the deadly wildfires in a bombshell lawsuit that's been filed by the former fire chief, Christian Crowley, of the city of Los Angeles. She said that she is being punished for telling the truth and that they didn't have a legal right to do that. Based on everything that I've seen and read, she has a pretty compelling case.
Yeah, she seems to. I mean, she's saying it was a smear campaign or retaliation orchestrated by Bass, false statements about how the fire warnings were handled. She repeatedly warned city leadership, hey, these budget cuts and staffing changes are weakening the department's readiness. The big thing about the lawsuit, John, is that this takes it to a new and very dangerous level for Mayor Bass because, for two big folks to be pointing fingers, Bass saying Crowley was bad, Crowley said Bass was bad. Okay, yeah, that happens. Once you file a lawsuit, suddenly there's this structural basis for Crowley's lawyers to say, okay, lawsuit equals depositions. You have to sit for a sworn interview, Mayor Bass, subpoenas to all sorts of third parties. You have to hand over the documents if they could in any way relate to Crowley's lawsuit. Notices to produce documents by Bass. She's got to open everything up. So without the armament of the lawsuit, then it's just pointing fingers. But if you're willing to fire that bullet and file the suit, you have all those things, and so that could really help her establish her case. Otherwise, it would just be yelling at each other.
Bass is already saying that many relevant things that would theoretically come up in a trial like this have already been deleted. Things like text messages that were sent in January when the fires were raging.
And of course, how guilty does that look? I mean, we all know from our, Microsoft Outlook. I'm looking at. I have, John, 263,350 emails in my email program, and it's not because I'm, some fancy busy person. I just never delete anything. It's all there. For her,
Well, wait a minute. How many of those are from Caesar's Palace trying to get you to go out there and play blackjack?
Well, actually, they just had a guy with hair on his neck show up to collect the debt. So, they didn't have to email. They just threatened me. But, that's the thing. How weird is it? Why would anybody delete stuff related to this, public tragedy, this huge thing where everybody, inquiring minds want to know, why did people allow this simmering fire to erupt again? So if it's gone, it's gone, although, you'd expect, is anything really gone? If you have Bill Gates in his prime digging through a mainframe, can't he reconstruct just about everything? So we'll see. If it's gone, it looks bad. If it isn't gone, then Crowley's lawyers will be able to plow through and see if there's some nuggets that could help her in court.
Does this smack you as a case that's going to go to trial or something that'll be settled? Because I would imagine if you're Karen Bass and you're spending the city's money, who cares? Give this woman whatever she wants, make her go away, and let's make sure that none of this embarrassing information ever comes to light.
Oh, exactly. So the only reason cases like this go to trial, John, is if somebody is saying, it's not about money. I just want to be vindicated. I want the world to see in the context of a jury trial how I was right and how bad the other people are. So that's rarely the case, though, because when you dangle $1 million or $5 million check in front of Crowley or any other plaintiff, no matter how much they really want to go to trial and see what a jury thinks about this, they'll probably go for it. And with Bass, she certainly got an incentive for this to go away. So she can somehow maneuver a deal where let's have a mediation because, they're paying mediators, John, these days, 15, 20, 25 grand a day to settle cases. And they're not judges or arbitrators who have the power to say you win, you lose. Mediators just, twist arms and massage and, oh, come on, plaintiff, come down. And, oh, all right, defendant, well, you pay a little more than you're comfortable with. And so they're going to definitely do that. And, of course, Bass would like to remain in office and win elections and so on. So she does not want this thing to go to trial and have a big verdict explode in her face.
What about from the point of view of third parties? Because I would imagine, let's say, if this lawsuit were to go to trial and there were text messages and emails and conversations that were memorialized in some way or another that shows that the city understood that they were in hot water and that they understood that that fire was raging in part because of their deficiencies. If I'm, let's say, the insurance companies who are now on the hook for billions of dollars, that information is salient to me. If you are the insurance companies, how badly do you want this to go to trial so information that could potentially be helpful to you at some point in the future and would maybe let you off the hook for many of these costs could really be something that's a game changer for that industry and those people?
No, your instinct is absolutely right. From the standpoint of the insurance companies or other third parties who were somehow involved in failing to maintain fire breaks and staffing problems and, no water, people and insurance companies, nobody's going to feel sorry for them. They've always, big, deep pockets. They got plenty of money to pay. So if there are various folks other than the big personalities like Crowley and Bass who are involved in litigation, as they already are and will be to a greater extent, if they can actually sort of move the needle in terms of public hatred away from, okay, these insurance companies, we don't like them anyway, and they're really to blame. But if the general consensus in the public mind is, it was really Bass's fault or Crowley's fault or whatever, you're right. It can divert the blame game away from the folks who are going to be dragged in, and they're going to end up settling a bunch of cases because the insurance companies don't want to go in front of a jury. Every time you go in front of a jury with an insurance company, you're looking at 12 people who basically hate you. You killed Aunt Bertha last year by denying her health claim. So they'd like to see settlements as well in that sense.
We're speaking with Royal Oakes, co-host of the Too Many Lawyers podcast, which you can download wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Royal, let's shift gears here a second time and talk about an awful child molester by the name of David Allen Funston. He was charged and convicted and sentenced by a judge and jury here in California for doing all kinds of awful things to children. He was sentenced to multiple life terms and then some. The jury and the judge, I believe, walked away from that with the understanding that this guy would be going to jail for a good long time and not ever be given the opportunity to do something like that again until, of course, a parole board in California voted to let him out. That board, appointed by Gavin Newsom, using a law that was signed by Gavin Newsom as the excuse, voted to let this individual out. Newsom said, I personally didn't do it. Don't blame me, and don't go looking too hard to find out how all these other people got there. And now a prosecutor in Placer County is now going to charge this guy with yet another crime to try to keep him incarcerated so he doesn't get out and do this to another child. What do you make of this entire mess?
Well, Placer County is the hero in this deal because they're trying to protect the public. I think, again, your instinct is right in the sense that Newsom's in trouble here. He signed into law a bill. It was called the Elderly Parole Program. And the new law allowed parole for inmates over 50 after you've been in for 20 years. And so Newsom is, he gets the credit or the blame if that was a good or a bad law. And now it's looking like it was a bad law. So he can't separate himself. He can't say, well, I'm not the parole board. I didn't make this decision to let this monster out. You signed the law that established the basis for release. Now, one thing people might be a little confused about, John, is because there's been a lot of publicity over the last many years. Sometimes governors say, parole board, you're letting out Squeaky Fromm? Not on my watch, pal. I'm not letting Manson. I'm overriding you. Sirhan. He's repeatedly. The parole board has said, well, it was terrible. You killed Robert Kennedy, but enough is enough. We are letting you out. And governors say no. But the difference is that law, the law that the governor relies on to veto, says governor may override murder conviction. So if you commit murder, the parole board says you're out. The governor has a power in California to say, no, you're not out. But anything other than murder, like this guy, kidnapping, sexual assault, child molestation. So Newsom was not in a position to overrule it. So he can say that. But he does have to own the fact that he signed the law. And, it's part of the whole thing. You remember the Menendez brothers. The only reason they were able to go for parole last year is because they changed the law. When the Menendez brothers were convicted, the judge said life without parole. But then the statute was changed because in Sacramento, they don't like to keep people in prison very long. And they said, oh, you know what? If you were under 18 or 21 when you committed the crime, or under 25, I don't recall the exact number. And if you've been in for a long time, 25 or 30 years, doggone it, you can ask for parole. That's why the brothers were able to ask. They haven't got it yet, but they're kind of on their way. So bottom line is we can blame the legislature, but we can also blame Newsom.
What do you think the reason is for wanting to let child molesters out who are elderly? Because we know that elderly people do molest children. It's something that I think that's in their brain more than anything. Do you think that the state just wants to shift the health care costs of elderly people, which can be expensive, from the state to the federal government? Because if they release them, they then dump them on Medicare?
I doubt that dollar angle had anything to do with the legislative decision. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, we could go to legislative history. Maybe that's all they talked about in the hearings in Sacramento. But instead, my guess is this, John. We are in a trend in California where things are so progressive in Sacramento. This notion of a carceral state, it's racist. We have more people behind bars than anybody on the planet. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, well, the stats tell us we solve about 50% of crimes. So if we only solve 50% of crimes, why are you complaining about all the people in prison? We should have twice as many people in prison if you wanted to put all the bad guys in, but we don't. But the bottom line is these different laws, like, oh, well, you're over 50 and you've done 20 years, let them out. Oh, you were young when you committed a murder and you were told life without parole, let them out anyway. I think it's just part of a drip, drip, drip adoption of the progressive mindset that, doggone it, we live in a racist society with a racist criminal justice system. So let's get some of these poor folks back on the streets.
What's coming up on the next podcast?
Oh, my gosh, it's a new chill vibe, John. My son Connor and I, now we have adult beverages are involved in the podcast. And it runs for an hour and a half or 2 hours. We chop it down to the 20 or 30 minutes that are really best, which usually involves just me talking, not Connor. So you check it out. Go on YouTube. It's video. On YouTube. It's at Too Many Lawyers Podcast. We're going to talk about Carvahlo. We're going to talk about about Crowley and Bass, and also the Clintons. They're testifying. I got into a lot of trouble with a silly joke on the internet. I said Bill Clinton was threatened with criminal contempt. His lawyers are coming up with a cruel and unusual punishment defense in case he's assigned to share a cell with Hillary. And I got more reaction, John. I got a disc jockey from Madison, Wisconsin, who on Instagram said, "Thanks, Piggy. You're a no-talent creep." Just because I told that silly joke.
Well, we'll all be listening to the next Too Many Lawyers podcast. Royal, have a great weekend. Thanks so much for stopping by. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. As we told you before, there is a new PPIC poll that dropped this week. It showed former Fox News commentator Steve Hilton in first place as a candidate for governor here in California in June's primary election. In second place, it's Orange County's own Potatoes Porter. Almost did it. Didn't. Potatoes Porter. She came in second place.
Like, please.
And then in third place, it was the Republican Sheriff of Riverside County, Chad Bianco. Finishing just out of the money, Bay Area Congressman Eric Swalwell. He came in fourth. And then you have billionaire Tom Steyer coming in fifth. And then there's a break where you have other candidates where Javier Becerra, Antonio Villaraigosa, Betty Yee, Tony Thurmond, and others. Well, those are the Republicans and the Democrats who are polling the best, but there are other candidates who are also running for governor who are members of third parties, Green Party candidates, Libertarian Party candidates, Peace and Freedom. And you also have candidates who are no party preference, meaning they do not belong to any political party. One of those candidates who is running for California governor as a no-party preference candidate is a gentleman by the name of Lewis Herms. You can get him online at hermsforcali.com. He is kind enough to join us this afternoon. Lewis, thanks so much for stopping by.
It's great to be here, John. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and why are you running for governor?
Well, my background is primary in troubleshooting, where I've gone into several businesses over the years, and my goal is to bring them from the bottom to the top, and then I transfer to other businesses. So I've been a kind of a solutions guy for several decades. Over the last 6 years, I've actually had a platform called Screw Big Gov that became very, very popular, and things called the Truth Tour, Freedom in Action, Remember Your Oath. And these are all platforms that I've run for the people themselves, traveling all over the country, teaching principles, constitutional principles, how we can take back our governments from a local level. But what drew me into this, this election was very interesting. So because I have some influence in those realms, I was looking to see what candidate I could support. And unfortunately, I didn't find anybody that was really talking about child sex trafficking and how we can fix it. And I've done documentaries on that. I didn't see many people talking about what I call the parasites that have been controlling offices, elections, governments for a long time. Nor did I see many people really talking about what I consider the medical mafia. And so, therefore, be honest, I just asked God, I go, what am I to do here? And I thought for sure the answer was just do another documentary, travel, wake people up, do some tours, do a whole bunch of events. And that's not the answer I got. The answer was you're running for governor and you're going to disrupt things and make some tractions, but focus on policies and solutions, which day one, and I believe it was June 2nd of last year, actually June 3rd, I put 17 problems, 17 solutions on my website, and we're getting a lot of traction in regards to that right now.
When you talk about the medical mafia, what do you mean by that?
Well, for example, great example, during COVID, there was shutdowns because of they needed to mask us, or it was in some cases mandatory vaccines. And they worked with what I call the corpocracy in order to try to hold us down and prevent our choice. It's interesting that you have the left wants freedom of choice on their body, except when they want to inject us with something or force us into something. And therefore, I really had a challenge with that, and I don't feel like our pharmaceutical companies have been disclosing what we really need to have disclosed in regards to their medicine, and we need to have informed choice, which we really haven't had. So I've been railing against what I call big pharma for a long time, but it's the control mechanism around that is what really is the genuine problem, because they have straight immunity on vaccines. They're not held accountable. And I believe there's healthier ways to do anything. I believe God put all the health solutions on earth somewhere, and we don't need a synthetic all the time in order for us to be the healthiest in society.
It's wild to me that after we shut everything down in California, and boy, did we shut everything down, more than most states, maybe Hawaii and a couple of others were more shut down than us. But certainly during COVID, I didn't travel to a state that was more shut down than California. And we did things that we know we didn't need to do that were, in fact, extremely harmful to us, like shutting down the beaches, shutting down the golf courses, forcing kids to not go to school and sit at home and sit in front of the computer and play video games all day. But it seems like, and I understand with Newsom, he certainly doesn't want to put his decision-making in the spotlight because he's running for president now and he's over California. But there was never really a post-mortem that was done that said, we did all of these things and we really shouldn't have done it. Next time we get hit with a pandemic, we shouldn't do that again. And a report like that, as far as I know, doesn't exist where we look in a very sober way about the mistakes that we made.
Well, it certainly wouldn't exist on the left because accountability is not part of their nature. And that's one of the biggest challenges for us to face it. And let's say they maybe they unintentionally did this, therefore they should own up to their mistakes. I feel like there was intent to it because when you lock people down, you have a lot more control over society, and that the fact that you would see Gavin Newsom and Pelosi at parties without masks having a good time or getting their hair done while we were all locked down and masked at the same time or requested a mask, I refused to. That is showing you that they have this elite status that whatever they're doing is more important than what we're doing. And that's a lack of sovereignty that we need desperately. And that's what I'm trying to bring back. But to expect accountability from the left, I think it's not ever going to happen. But it was so obvious what was done. I mean, there were children. Think of it. You have children learning how to speak. A big part of learning how to speak is watching the expressions on faces and seeing the way the mouth movements move because they mimic that to speak. And that was taken away from them because people were masked. And there's speech impediments to this day that children during what I call the masked age are trying to overcome. It's sickness to me. It's absolutely sickness.
Let's go back to your party designation as no party preference. In California, you can be no party preference because you think the Democratic Party is too far to the center and you are to the left of the Democratic Party. You could be no party preference because you think the Republican Party is too far to the center and you're farther to the right, or vice versa. For whatever reason, you do not feel comfortable joining a political party. Why did you become a no party preference candidate? Why is your registration no party preference? And how would you describe your ideology?
Well, I'm a constitutionalist, and I really appreciate what the founding fathers have set up for us. And if we go back historically and look at what John Adams, George Washington, James Madison said, they virtually declared that a two-party system would be the death of America. Thomas Jefferson himself indicated that if he had to choose between going to heaven or choosing one of two parties, he would not be going to heaven. So they knew what was going on, because what happens in this two-party system, we have a division. And where there's divisiveness, that is when we can be conquered. I believe it's intentional. And California is the worst. So we have the Democrats who are already a captured operation, in my opinion, right? It's a Marxist organization currently. And then you have the Republicans that, if you look at their platform, it aligns with me conservatively. In fact, many people have said I'm much more conservative than the Republicans that are running. The challenge is the Republican Party in California, in my opinion, is also a captured operation. They've had no intent to win over 50 years, because if they win, they're accountable, and if they don't win, they can't get money. So it's a catch-22 for them, in my opinion. So I said, I'm going to go with the Founding Fathers and what they said, and I can draw new voters in, or voters that didn't vote in the last primary, which is 67% of them. And they're going to be attracted to somebody that cares about one thing, the people. What I care about, the policy and the people. I'm not interested of aligning myself with a party. I think both parties are captured operations at this point, and you can see it right now in the two top contenders in the Republicans. There's a lot of rhino behavior, Republican in name only behavior, because they're scurrying for votes right now. I don't play games, John. I'm not interested in playing games. I believe we live in the age of authenticity, where people just want somebody that's going to be honest and work very, very hard, and that has solutions for things. So that's why I'm an NPP.
In the latest poll, Steve Hilton is the top performing candidate of all political parties. He came in first place. He is formerly of Fox News, and he certainly, if he finishes in the top two, will make the November ballot. You think he's soft. What subjects do you believe he's soft on?
Well, interesting. Well, he's definitely soft on abortion. He's stuttered around that question several times. He's soft on holding what I call the medical mafia accountable, very, very. And I think he's probably trying to position himself for large donations, which is a game that I do not play whatsoever. Those two alone should be a major concern. I know as of November 8th, when I debated him, he was extraordinarily soft on ending child sex trafficking, and now he's made it a pillar of his campaign, which is a big concern of mine, because my knowledge base and my connections and the task force that I'm already setting up in regards to fight this is very knowledgeable. So the fact, I hope for God that he's not using that just to get elected, because that would not serve the children well that are getting, frankly, raped daily by these sickos.
Well, what additionally would you advocate for? Because I know the big deal in Sacramento was the Shannon Grove legislation. She's the state legislator from the Bakersfield area, and Scott Wiener, who was the chairman of the committee at the time, was blocking her legislation from moving forward, and she just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. It's my understanding that Hilton supports that legislation. Do you think that doesn't go far enough, or is there something else you would advocate for?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on here, so it's a great question. I did a documentary on this years ago called Cages. So it goes as deep as even the Epstein files, which I've disclosed 6 years ago, because there's documented cases of who's connected to this and the satanic element. But put that aside, the way this can be attacked is we already have software that can track online people that have predatory behavior, and then we can track that and see if there's something there. If there's a there, they need to be held accountable. I believe that our laws should almost be doubled in regards to anything regarding harming children. And I'll go as far as if you rape a child, the death penalty should be on the table. I have a task force set up to go after these, but the big thing that needs to be done, and I've said this often, is hold a sheriff's symposium so they understand exactly how they are protected when they go after this. I've had several sheriffs tell me that one of their biggest concerns when they start targeting this is it's bigger than they can handle, and they become a target themselves. That's scary. So if we go in this, we have to go into it with courage and education, but we have to be able to support our sheriffs, educate our sheriffs, and hold them accountable if they are unwilling to go after these predators.
The other top polling Republican is Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. You alleged that he was a rhino, too. What issues do you think he's soft on?
Well, frankly, and I don't generally like to talk about other candidates, but I found Chad to he'll go the way the wind blows. So, for example, yesterday he came out. He says, "I'm going to be the strongest 2A constitutional carry sheriff that's out there." Yet, if that's the case, I would ask, why did he arrest somebody called Ben Miller, but before carrying weapons into his car when he told the sheriffs 1.2 miles away from a Trump event that he had the weapons in his car? Yet he tried to position this guy as the third Trump assassin, which is the farthest thing from the truth. And he has a history of this. So it's whatever works for him at the time. That was politically expedient, and then therefore he launched his campaign on the backs of that accusation, which he later had to retract, and the FBI said it's false accusation, and Ben's been completely cleared. So how can you do both? I don't understand that. I know for sure. I'm a CCW carrier. I've said the 2A is the most important amendment we have because it protects all the other ones. And it's also the simplest. It says, shall not infringe. And until I hear him say, shall not infringe at all costs, I wouldn't believe him in regards to the 2A.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about electability here. It is very difficult in California for any Republican candidate to get elected statewide. It hasn't happened since Arnold Schwarzenegger won re-election back in 2010, and Steve Poizner was able to win as insurance commissioner. Actually, I think that was 2006. They left office in 2010, that long ago. No party preference candidate has ever won a statewide election. What is your plan to get in the top two?
That's a great question. Well, there have been independents that have won, Jesse Ventura in Minnesota, for example. In regards to California, we have to also look at it with our eyes open and see what's really going on. There's been an election fraud, documented election fraud in California for over 40 years. It's undisputable now. I recently sent a letter to President Trump asking for an emergency election order in regards to California. And even Peter Tickton, President Trump's best friend, called me in. Another person helped draft this, an American hero, because he thought it was so well put together. And I was told that President Trump looked at it a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of his true socials and tweets seem to indicate that we're going in that direction. So we have to take, that's one part of it. And to say that a Republican hasn't been elected, it's true, but has it been fraudulent elections? I've looked at the voter rolls, and the voter rolls are just an absolute mess. I think there's an appetite right now, because of the disenfranchisement of both parties, for an NPP, like myself, of no party preference, to have a fantastic chance, especially if I do this. I bring out some of the 67% that did not actually go to the polls in 2022. And we only need about 7% of that, John, which is great. Now, do we know our policies work? We do. So there's been a lot of polls that poll somewhere between 200 and 1,000 people that are showing, it's a popularity poll. They show Hilton, Bianco, Crazy Little Porter, all these things. But there's only one poll that's polled 5,000. In Northern California, and they polled 5,000 people in the independent, Republicans, and Democrats. What they did different, though, is they took the name off the polls, and they only showed the policy positions. And I was number one in that, and if I remember correctly, I believe I was 13 points higher than Steve Hilton. So our policies are resonating with people. It's just getting the word out at this moment. We're getting a lot of traction on that. That's why we're on your station, so on and so forth. So I think we're going to change things. And I don't believe the past equals the future. I believe this is God's work right now. And I'm not saying I'm God's candidate, but it's for we the people right now. So I believe there also is going to be some divine intervention here.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Lewis Herms, candidate for governor. You can get him online at hermsforcali.com. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
It's the John Phillips Show.